Defying expectations now, that's where the real fun begins, isn't it? People cling to their expectations like a child clutching a broken toy. Something familiar, something predictable, something that doesn't talk back or move unless they say so. They build these neat little diagrams in their minds about who you are, what you can handle, where you should fall, and how loudly you're allowed to scream while falling. They love order, not because it makes sense, but because it makes them feel safe. And nothing cracks that sense of safety quite like you strolling right through the middle of their precious blueprint with that look. Half confusion, half amusement, like you never got the memo that you were supposed to play along. See, people don't actually fear danger. Not really. What they're terrified of is unpredictability. The moment you stop behaving according to the script they wrote for you, the world around them starts shaking, and suddenly they realize they never had control in the first place. Expectations are their illusion of power. Your refusal to fit inside those expectations is your accidental rebellion. They want you to be fragile, easily frightened, conveniently breakable. They want you to fold on command, to whimper at the right time, to stay in the neat little role they assigned you. And when you don't, oh, the panic that ripples through them is delicious. They'll call it luck. They'll call it coincidence. They'll call it anything but what it truly is, you stepping outside the invisible cage they tried to build around you. Because if they admit you're capable of more than they predicted, then they have to face the ugly truth that their predictions were never worth much to begin with. They'll scramble to rebuild their theories about you, patching holes with excuses, stitching together new limitations to place on you. But you'll break those too, without even trying. And that's where the real madness begins. Their madness, not yours. People are comfortable when they can measure you. They like to pretend they can calculate your every move, how much pain you can take, how many hits you can survive, how loudly you'll scream when cornered. It reassures them. But when you start surviving things you weren't supposed to, when you keep walking after the moment they swear should have shattered you, you become something they can't quantify. And nothing terrifies a person more than something that won't fit inside a box, won't sit neatly on a shelf, won't obey gravity the way they think it should. You see it in their eyes? First the confusion, then the frustration, then that tiny flicker of fear they try so hard to hide. Because if you can survive what they designed to break you, what else can you survive? If their expectations were wrong about this, what else might they be wrong about? You become a crack in their worldview, a living contradiction, a reminder that life doesn't always follow the neat little path drawn in their heads. And once someone realizes their expectations can't protect them, they start unraveling, slowly, beautifully, inevitably. Defying expectations doesn't just shake people, it exposes them. It shows you who they are without their illusions. Some get angry, because anger is easier than admitting they underestimated you. Some get nervous, because your unpredictability is like a ticking clock they can't disarm. Some get obsessed, trying to figure you out, trying to put you back into the shapes you already slipped out of. And some start watching you differently. Not with pity, not with doubt, but with the uneasy recognition that maybe you're not the one who was small in the first place. Survival, funny thing, isn't it? Not the clean, heroic, hand-on-heart kind they show in those shiny posters. No. I'm talking about the kind that wasn't supposed to happen. The kind that someone out there carefully arranged not to happen. The kind where you're meant to be a footnote, a forgotten whisper, a neat little casualty in someone else's grand design. And yet you crawl out of the rubble, brush the dust off your sleeves, and keep walking like nothing went according to their precious plan. That kind of survival doesn't just keep you alive. It sends a message, loud enough to crack their tidy little world in half. Because when people plan your failure, they don't do it casually. Oh, they put effort into it. They study your weaknesses, real or imagined. They pick at your past, your fears, your scars, like they're reading the instruction manual on how to break you. They watch closely, waiting for you to slip, hoping you will. And when that moment comes, the one they think will end you, they sit back, satisfied, already preparing their smug little eulogies in their heads. They think they've won. They think you're finished. It's adorable, really. But then you survive. Maybe you survive quietly, crawling out of the moment like you're still figuring out what just happened. Maybe you survive boldly, standing up with a grin that shouldn't exist after what you went through. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that you're still here, still breathing, still moving, still ruining the story they wrote for you. And that's survival. Oh, it's more insulting than any punchline. It's a declaration they never expected to hear. See, when someone expects you to fail, they're not just predicting an outcome. They're placing a bet on your limits. They're declaring that they know you better than you know yourself. They're asserting that your story ends where they say it does. Your survival proves something they can't stand to acknowledge they miscalculated. You weren't as weak as they hoped. You weren't as fragile as they assumed. You weren't the character they tried to cast you as. And nothing bruises an ego faster than realizing the puppet cut its own strings. Survival becomes a mirror, the kind people don't like looking into, because suddenly they're confronted with the ugly truth that their control was an illusion. They imagine themselves the masterminds, the architects, the brilliant minds orchestrating your downfall. But your survival turns all that into a joke at their expense. It exposes their vanity, their overconfidence, their desperate need to feel superior. And you, without even trying, become the very thing that rattles them. They'll try to rewrite the moment, of course. They'll pretend it didn't bother them. They'll claim they always knew you'd get through it. They'll say it wasn't that serious, that you got lucky, that the whole thing was blown out of proportion. They'll say anything that keeps them from admitting the truth. You ruin their plans just by refusing to disappear. Your presence becomes a reminder they can't erase. Every time they see you, they're forced to confront the failure they tried to gift, wrap as your destiny. And the funny twist is, you don't even have to gloat. You don't have to shout or brag or rub anything in their faces. Your survival does all the speaking for you. It's a walking announcement that their expectations were too small, their schemes too flimsy, their understanding of you embarrassingly incomplete. You turn into a living contradiction to their narrative, and that kind of contradiction digs under their skin in ways you'd never need to articulate. Because survival, unexpected, unapproved, unpredicted survival, changes the energy in every room you walk into. It shifts the balance. It rewrites the tone. It forces people to see you not as the victim they planned, but as the variable they couldn't control. And once they realize that, once they feel the sting of their failed estimation, they start watching you differently, with that uneasy blend of curiosity and fear that only comes from seeing someone refuse to die in the spot they marked for them. Power, oh, that's a delicious little illusion, isn't it? People spend their whole lives chasing it, clawing, sweating, plotting, trying to look strong, sound strong, feel strong. They puff their chests out, raise their voices, stomp their feet like children throwing a tantrum, all because they desperately want someone, anyone, to believe they matter. They equate loudness with authority, control with confidence, theatrics with influence. But the funny part, the truly hysterical part, is that real power doesn't need an introduction. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't demand applause. The strongest presence in the room is always the one that isn't trying to prove a thing. See, when you stop showing off, people start paying attention for real, because there's something unsettling about someone who doesn't need the spotlight to dominate the stage. Someone who walks in quietly, calmly, almost lazily, yet somehow bends the atmosphere around them without lifting a finger. They can't explain it. They can't measure it, and that makes them nervous. Nervous people reveal their truths. And truths, well, they're always far more fun than lies. Most people rely on performance. They throw around threats, flex their so-called strength, parade their victories like trophies. They want eyes on them at all times, otherwise their confidence crumbles. But you win without announcing you're playing. You cut through the noise without shouting. You break their expectations without breaking a sweat. Power shows itself most when it doesn't look like it's trying. When it sneaks into the room instead of bursting through the door. When it exists in the subtext of your movements, the tilt of your head, the way you don't flinch when others would. And that's what drives people up the walls, the ease of it. The casualness, the effortless way you make their struggles look silly. They've worked so hard to build their fragile kingdoms, stacking their little bricks of ego and insecurity into towers they hope you'll admire. But then you stroll by uninterested, unimpressed, untouched by their attempts to intimidate. That's when they realize something that terrifies them more than any threat could. You don't need what they worship. You don't play their game. You don't follow their rules. And someone who doesn't crave approval is someone they can't control. They watch you closely, oh yes, more closely than they'll ever admit. They dissect your every move, trying to figure out how you manage to do so much while looking like you're doing so little. They wait for you to slip, just once, so they can convince themselves you're just like them. But you don't. You keep moving in your own rhythm, untouched by their desperation, unburdened by their expectations. And that quiet competence, that effortless dominance, makes them unravel, one thread at a time. Because deep down, they know something they'll never say aloud. The ones who scream the loudest are usually the weakest. The ones who boast the most are usually the most insecure. The ones who need to show their power are the ones who don't actually have it. But someone who doesn't flaunt it, someone who doesn't even acknowledge it, that person is dangerous. Not because they're trying to be, but because the mystery of their strength gnaws at everyone else's mind. It's the silence that scares them, the calm, the lack of effort, the way you can walk through their chaos like it's nothing more than a mildly inconvenient breeze. They can't predict someone who moves without explaining. They can't prepare for someone whose power isn't loud or theatrical, but woven into the fabric of their presence. They can't anticipate a person who doesn't need to try, doesn't need to posture, doesn't need permission to be formidable. And in that unsettling quiet, in that effortless stride, in that unbothered existence, people finally see what real power looks like. Something they can't imitate, can't manufacture, can't control. Something that simply is, without ever needing to announce itself, chaos. Now that's a playground most people are too afraid to step into. They tiptoe around it, clutching their routines, their schedules, their neat little safety nets like life rafts in a stormy sea. They want certainty, predictability, clean lines, and clear answers. They want everything labeled, boxed, and nicely alphabetized, because order makes them feel like they understand the world. But the world was never meant to be understood. It wrethers, it twists, it contradicts itself. Chaos isn't the exception, it's the rule. And the ones who learn to walk through it without a map, without a plan, without the comforting illusion of control, those are the ones the universe seems to favor. Most people spend their lives trying to outrun chaos, as if it's some monster waiting in the dark. They hide behind routines, cling to expectations, build fences around their minds, hoping to keep the unpredictable out. But every fence breaks eventually. Every perfectly crafted plan falls apart the moment it meets reality. And when it does, most people panic. They freeze, scream, scramble for the pieces, desperately trying to glue their world back together. They think chaos is punishment, when really, it's opportunity wearing a slightly crooked smile. Chaos is honest. That's what people don't like admitting. It doesn't pretend to be safe or polite. It doesn't make promises. It strips everything down to what actually matters. And if you can stand in the middle of that storm, unprepared, unprotected, unbothered, you learn something very interesting about yourself. You learn you don't need everything to make sense in order to move forward. You don't need the path to be straight to walk it. You don't need perfect timing to take your shot. You just need to keep going, even when the world looks like it's laughing in your face. And the funniest part, chaos rewards the ones who don't flinch. Not because it's kind, but because it respects movement. When others freeze, you adapt. When others complain, you improvise. When others wait for someone else to sweep the mess away, you dive right into it with a grin, knowing that inside the mess is where the real possibilities are hiding. Order limits you. Chaos stretches you. People don't understand that the unexpected isn't your enemy. It's your fuel walking through chaos. Unplanned makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability is a kind of power all on its own. When you're not tethered to a script, no one can guess your next move. And when no one can guess your next move, they can't stop you. They try, throwing obstacles in your path, setting traps, building little mazes for you to get lost in. But you don't follow the maze. You kick down the walls, step over the wreckage, and keep moving with that effortless shrug that drives them insane. People who fear chaos think confidence comes from knowing what's coming next. But real confidence, it comes from knowing you'll survive whatever comes next, even if you have no idea what it'll be. It comes from trusting your instincts more than you trust their blueprints. It comes from recognizing that the world won't always give you stable ground, so you learn to balance on rubble. You learn to laugh while everything shakes. You learn to navigate the smoke and noise like it's home. And once you're comfortable there, once chaos stops scaring you and starts exciting you, you become someone the world can't prepare for. Someone who can't be cornered by surprise. Someone who thrives in the exact situations that make everyone else crumble. You stop waiting for perfect conditions and start creating your own openings right in the middle of the mess. Chaos doesn't swallow people like you. It crowns. Threats, oh, they get louder, don't they? The moment your existence stops fitting neatly inside the little story someone wrote for you, suddenly every whisper becomes a warning, every glance becomes a challenge, every insecure soul starts puffing up like a balloon desperate not to pop. You don't even have to attack them. You don't have to lift a finger. All you have to do is exist outside the limits they tried to set for you, and watch how quickly their voices rise, how their nerves crackle, how their fragile confidence starts shaking like a cheap light bulb about to burst, because people aren't threatened by what you do. No, they're threatened by what you represent. You are living proof that their rules aren't laws, their expectations aren't destiny, their hierarchy isn't inevitable. You dismantle them without touching them, and that drives them absolutely mad. They built their sense of superiority on the belief that you'd stay in your place, that you'd stumble on cue, that your story would trace the predictable little path they sketched out for you. But then you go and ruin the script simply by breathing differently than they expected. The funny thing is, threats usually come from the weakest ones, the ones terrified of being seen for what they actually are. The louder they bark, the more they reveal. They want to intimidate you into shrinking back down to a size they're comfortable with. They want you to apologize for your resilience, for your unpredictability, for your refusal to break when they were counting on it. But the moment you step out of that box they tried so desperately to put you in, they have to face the truth. Their power over you was imaginary from the start, and that truth terrifies them. So what do terrified people do? They get loud. They get dramatic. They try to reclaim control with noise and threats, hoping you'll mistake volume for strength. But you don't. You see right through it. You see that the raised voices, the pointed fingers, the frantic attempts to make you feel small are nothing more than fear wearing a costume 2 sizes too big. The fear that you've exposed them. The fear that you're not as breakable as they hope. The fear that you can do in seconds what they need a whole support group to achieve. Your existence becomes an irritation, a splinter in their mind they can't tweeze out. Every time you succeed without trying, every time you shrug off the setback they prayed would crush you, every time you walk away from a situation they expected you to crawl out of, you're rewriting their understanding of what's possible. And nothing threatens a person more than having their worldview rewritten in real time by someone they underestimated. Oh, and make no mistake, they will try to bring you down. Not because you hurt them, but because you embarrassed them. There's a difference. You surviving where they expected you to fall forces them to confront their own fragility. You winning accidentally highlights how hard they have to try just to feel competent. You slipping through every trap they set reminds them that they aren't nearly as clever as they pretend to be. Their threats are a desperate scramble to regain footing in a world you've knocked off balance simply by refusing to lose. And the best part, you don't even have to fight back. Just keep moving, keep showing up, keep proving unintentionally that their panic isn't caused by anything you've done. It's caused by what you ever are, a walking contradiction to their expectations. A reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just smiles, shrugs, and keeps going. And that quiet defiance is the kind of threat they can't predict, can't prepare for, can't silence. No matter how loudly they try to pretend otherwise, unintentional victories now, those are the ones that sting the most, aren't they? Not the big, dramatic triumphs with trumpets blaring and crowds cheering. No, no. The victories that truly rattle people are the ones you barely notice, the ones you stumble into, the ones you achieve while looking the other way, humming a tune, minding your business. Because nothing exposes the weakness in someone else's plan like you winning without even realizing you were supposed to be losing. People love to believe they have the upper hand. They study you, judge you, define you, all while pretending they're being subtle about it. They convince themselves that they know your limits, your habits, your escape routes. They think they can predict how you'll respond, where you'll fall, when you'll break. They build entire strategies around their assumptions, layer upon layer of carefully arranged expectations, all designed to make sure you never rise higher than they feel comfortable with. But then you trip over your own feet and accidentally land somewhere above them. And that's a brand of humiliation no speech can fix. Because when you win without trying, you take away their favorite excuse. They can't claim you got lucky. Not really, because they never planned for you to be in the game to begin with. They can't claim you cheated, because you weren't even playing. They can't claim you overpowered them, because that would mean admitting they were trying and you weren't. Nothing hurts the ego quite like realizing someone else beat you while barely paying attention. It's like they brought their best armor to a fight you didn't even know you were attending. People hate being exposed, and unintentional victories do exactly that. They shine a bright, mocking light right on the cracks they tried to hide. Your casual success becomes a mirror, and they despise what they see in it. All that effort they poured into outsmarting you suddenly looks ridiculous. All the hours they spent plotting your downfall start to feel like wasted time. All the pride they built on being above you crumbles the moment you surpass them without lifting a finger. And here's the delicious part. You don't need to flaunt it. You don't need to brag or gloat or wave your trophy around like a maniac. Your indifference is the insult. The fact that you weren't aiming for victory makes the victory itself twice as sharp. It's the kind of success that feels less like a competition won and more like a cosmic joke told at their expense. A joke you didn't even know you were telling. A punchline they weren't ready for. But unintentional victories don't just humiliate. They reveal. They show you who's been quietly rooting against you. They show you who can't stand your progress. They show you who feels threatened not by your ambition, but by your existence. When someone gets angry at your accidental accomplishments, they're not angry at what you did. They're angry at what it proves. That their supposed superiority was built on sand. That their confidence depended on your compliance. That their strength only existed as long as you stayed weak. And once they realize you can succeed without trying, their entire foundation shakes. Because if you can rise by accident, what happens when you actually try? If you can outpace them while distracted, what happens when you start paying attention? If your unintended steps shatter their illusions, what would your intentional stride do? That question keeps them up at night, pacing, overthinking, re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about you. Your unintentional victories expose intentional weaknesses because they reveal the truth people hide behind their posture and their pride. They show who was betting against you. They show who feared your potential long before you even recognized it yourself. And they show, most importantly, that the limits placed on you were never real. They were imagined by people who hoped you'd never figure out how easily you could walk past them.